We will call to order the regular board meeting of the Board of Election Commissioners for the City of Chicago. Good morning. My name is Maricel Hernandez, and with me today is Commissioner June Brown.
Present.
And Commissioner William Cressy.
Also present.
Next item is a consideration of the agenda. Do we have any proposed changes?
None.
If not, we'll proceed with the approval of the board meeting minutes of September 26, 2023. Is there a motion to approve?
Seconded by Commissioner Cressy.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please state aye.
Commissioner Brown votes aye.
Commissioner Cressy votes aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next item is the Executive Director's Report. Mr. Holliday.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioner
morning.
Brown, and Commissioner Cressy. Today starts the training of the staff on the new e-poll books over the next 3 days by our vendor 10X at our super site. This training and demonstration includes all aspects of the new equipment and technology. Petition filing began yesterday for non-presidential candidates at both the state and Cook County offices and ends next Monday, December 5th. A list of filed candidates so far are available on those agencies' website. Once they're scanned, copies of nominating petitions submitted by Chicago candidates are shared with us. We will post them on our website. The deadline to file objections to these nominated petitions with either the state or the clerk's office is Monday, December 11th. We are readying ourselves for those who may want to come in and work up their objections to the petitions. Ours will be posted for viewing. Our staff has started taking the new security awareness lesson. These are lessons that we get from the security monitor on phishing and other things like that, malicious websites. This lesson is on public Wi-Fi. Be careful using it. On December 9th, I'll be participating as a panelist during the regular meeting of COLE. The subject of the discussion is how to complete a mail-in and in-person ballot, and how the board works and process votes and polling place employees. I'm looking forward to being on the panel. Lance Goff is a part of COLE, so he and I will be working on this together. My public information director, Max Bever, and I recently met with Carolina Lopez, Executive Director of Partnership for a Large Election Jurisdiction, Pledge, to discuss numerous topics including staff security ahead of a contentious presidential election year, as well as Chicago attending and presenting at the next Pledge annual meeting in Minneapolis in July of next year. So here's my report, Madam Chair.
Any questions?
Just a comment. The lessons on computer security and this latest one on public Wi-Fi are excellent. So I'm glad to see that we've got that going out to all of our people.
Yes, our IT manager, Matt Lynn, has set these up, and they're proven to be very helpful. I take them as well, so
Yes.
they're
Excellent.
very.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now we'll hear from our Assistant Executive Director, Sandra Aspera.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, Commissioner Cressy, Commissioner Brown. I'd like to start my report by letting you know that the warehouse has completed 30% of the upgrade and maintenance of the ICX touchscreens and 20% of the ICP2 scanners. Also, the warehouse has demagnetized all of the old e-poll books and continues to remove labels and tags from equipment and cases. A mock election will be conducted using the new e-poll book, and I am working with staff and our current equipment vendors to finalize the mock election timeline. As of Monday, November 20th, there are 2,913 election judges and 595 election coordinators who have confirmed they will be returning. The official nursing home list has been received from the State Board of Elections, and staff is finalizing the list of nursing homes that will be participating in the primary election. And this
Thank you.
concludes my report.
Just on the election judges, how are we looking in those numbers?
Well, it looks like we're halfway. Our
Good.
goal. So that's great. I believe election judges are expecting their deadline for the letter is December 6th. So hopefully by the next board meeting, I'll have better numbers.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you.
And now we'll hear from our Public Information Director, Max Bever.
Morning, Commissioners. Another update on our website. We are getting quite close. Testing is taking place, as well as rewriting of our web pages to get us ready. We're looking and hoping for an earlier launch on December 13th at this point, though that might be a slightly flexible deadline, but we are getting there. I'm looking to reach out to schedule a demonstration with community groups before the 13th, so looking to get that scheduled as a virtual meeting, so we'll be reaching out in the near future. The second notice of the 2023 canvass all will soon be reaching voters' mailboxes. Again, the second notice is the people where their mail bounced back from that address. Per law, we send them a second notice as a final attempt to reach that voter before moving forward with putting that voter in inactive status and removing them for the rolls ahead of the presidential elections for next year. That will complete our 2023 canvass ahead of deadline. Our next citywide mailing will take place in February of next year. That's our regular household mailer. That's where we'll be mailing all registered voters in the city their election information for voting on Election Day, early voting options, and their vote-by-mail options. An update from our community services team. They continue to attend events, voter registration drives, as well as election judge recruitment events throughout the end of the year. Some recent highlights from community services staff. Aimed at recruiting bilingual election judges, a great need ahead of the presidential elections next year, including events with our Hindi-speaking team at the Ganesh Temple of Chicago, as well as Diwali celebration at ISKCON Chicago, meetings with the Polish Consulate General of Chicago, as well as a table at the Taste of Poland, and a table recently at the 88 Marketplace in Chinatown. Community Services will continue these events. Again, we have a special eye for recruiting additional bilingual judges in 6 languages. That's Spanish, that's Chinese, Hindi, Polish, Korean, and Tagalog ahead of the 2024 presidential elections. And that completes my report.
So if a voter is placed on inactive status because of the failure to respond or the fact that we're getting the mail back, then what does the voter have to do?
If a voter's on inactive status, all they need to do is vote in the next election to put themselves back into that active status. However, if that voter is on that inactive status moving forward through the next elections, they will be ultimately removed from the rolls per the Illinois Election Code. But if voter is still properly registered to vote or ultimately updates their voter registration information, they can vote, and that will put them back into active voter status.
So what if they are on the mail ballot list?
The permanent vote-by-mail roster
Yeah,
list?
yeah.
So we are preparing to do some special communications to our permanent vote-by-mail roster list as soon as the new vote-by-mail applications are open, December 20th. We are planning email communications to all of those voters, asking them to confirm their permanent roster information ahead of the primary election. This would be specifically for the voters who've chosen all elections. That includes primary elections as part of their preference for a permanent roster. We'll be asking them to confirm their information as well as their preferred party ahead of the election. They will be able to use our new online vote-by-mail application on the website starting on December 20th, including a specific permanent roster online application where they can update that information, change their address, or also opt out of the next election, or choose to join the all elections or primary elections as part of their permanent roster status. We hope that this will be helpful for voters to not use just the paper form, but be able to confirm all of their preferences and information ahead of both of those elections, as well as new people join ahead of both March and November. Right now, we've got over 120,000 people signed up for the permanent roster. We'd like to see that grow. I expect, possibly we'd see 150, 160,000 next year. We think that this is really the future of a lot of our vote-by-mail voters, and we'll continue to try to convert additional vote-by-mail voters to the permanent roster in 2024.
Okay.
You mentioned bilingual voting. Can you tell me the percentage of all votes that need the bilingual services?
We have a certain amount of what's called limited English proficiency precincts within the city, LEP precincts, and they include those 6 languages that I just listed. I don't have the exact number of those precincts off the top of my head, but I'd be happy to get you all of those as well as our map. We did expand and add some additional precincts for Korean and Tagalog for the municipal elections. We'll see if we'll be adding any additional precincts. We are restarting meetings with our community organizations with language access organizations starting this Friday, and we'll continue to hold bi-weekly meetings heading into the next election. This is very helpful meetings for us to get additional feedback as well as learn of ways that we can work together to ensure that people have all the access that they need at the polls for March.
And so at the polls with those bilingual documents, we're covered with our touch screen?
Yes, the touchscreen, which there are, touchscreen located at every precinct polling place on Election Day, as well as all our early voting sites that are touchscreen only, actually include additional languages, including Arabic, Russian, Ukrainian, Gujarati, and Urdu. Those are all available on the touchscreen, including an audio ballot, but paper ballots on Election Day include those 6 languages that I included. We are also looking to create new signage that alerts, for the outside of the building, that alerts people to a bilingual judge who is present at that site. So if there's multiple bilingual judges, there'll be multiple signage that's within English and that language, letting people know that there is a bilingual judge on site that can assist them if needed.
You stated that you're working with community services on this project, so are they sending a diverse group of community service representatives so everybody knows each other, or how is that being set up?
That's correct. We've got full-time employees for community service representatives in Hindi, Polish, Chinese, and Spanish. They attend events within the community, like the ones that I just listed, specifically looking for bilingual judges in those language so they can speak directly with community members and answer
Right,
any of their
but
questions.
In the whole of the community service, it's a diversity from the community service group that goes, not just those persons, right?
That's correct. And we do ask and, hope we can rely on many of our community organizations to help us get the word out and bring us additional bilingual election judges ahead of next year.
I'd like those percentages to see how much of that is covered, needs to be covered.
Certainly, be happy to get you the percentages from the last election. As the Assistant Executive Director mentioned, we'll have clearer numbers of where our election judges are at after we receive that letter back from December 6th.
All right, I'll talk to you too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, excuse me, continuing on that, on the languages, just for the record, do you know how many different languages we have on the touchscreen in every polling place?
It is 12, including English, is on every touchscreen.
Okay, so voters, we have, up to 12 different languages, and then even if a voter is of a different language than is on the touchscreen, I know if the judges call Election Central, I believe we contract with a language service organization that can do any number of languages as well. I know we've had that in the past, so maybe not. But for the city of Chicago, the 12 covers just about everyone.
That's right, and that matches the same languages that are covered by Cook County Clerk's Office and their voting machines as well. The purpose of trying to recruit additional bilingual election judges is also to just have somebody on site so that there might not need a call to Election Central for any translation services. Community Services had a good amount of success in bringing back election judges that just served for the municipal election. We look to grow within our main 6 languages that our offices covered for 2024.
Yes, plus Election Central has folks there who speak different languages.
Has additional
as well.
translators in those languages available at Election Central on Election Day.
Will the electoral board hearings will be coming up next month. Will all that information also be on our website?
Yes, as the executive director mentioned, the State Board of Elections and Cook County Clerk's Office are receiving all the nominating petitions. They're putting those candidate lists online on their websites. As soon as we do receive the nominating petitions, the scanned copies for Chicago candidates, we will make them available on our website. We'll also make the objections available on our website once they come in as scanned PDFs.
Okay, very good. And then finally, with regards to the canvas mailers, again, just for the record, by law, we have to do this every 2 years, but this board does it every year so as to maintain the integrity of our voting rolls. The first mailer went out to every one of our registered voters. That's, what is that, 1.7
It's almost 1.7 million at this
7
point.
million. But the second mailer only goes, that first mailer is marked return to sender if it's undeliverable. The second mailer only goes to those that we received that first mailer back. And that second mailer requests that it be forwarded to their new address if the Postal Service has it. And then those folks are asked to get in touch with us and let us know what's happened to them. If we don't hear back, then they go on the inactive roster.
That's correct, Commissioner. And it looks like we had just over 131,000 of those second notices this year. That's pretty on par where it has been in previous years. Not much higher, not much lower. About the same about people who move or leave the city or forget to cancel their voter registration.
Okay, so out of the 1.7 million that went out in the first mailer, less than 10% of that, 131,000 went out in the second.
That's correct.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Hmm.
If there are no other questions, I'll proceed with the old business, infrastructure projects and changes in election administration, electronic poll books and voting equipment. We talked a little bit about some of these. Is there anything additional that, any other updates?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lasker, legislation?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The General Assembly is still out of session until approximately the middle of January, so.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll proceed to new business. First item is a contract extension with Larry Hansen for the redistricting services in relation to the 2024 Chicago School Board elections and other projects. And who would like to speak to this?
Yes, Madam Chair. Larry Hansen, he works along with our districts and boundaries. They're just waiting on the maps and everything for the school board, and he's teaching them and in a transitioning process now. So once this is all done, our staff will have the knowledge of how to do this without us having to contract someone. He's been a great help to the staff and to the office, and we're just looking forward to continuing this contract throughout next year.
So what specifically is he doing with the school board districts?
Okay, so once we get the maps, it's the geocoding and the what they call the census blocks, so that they could determine what district goes in what ward, or how many wards are to a district, school board district. And that's what he's working on with the staff and districts and boundaries, and teaching them to use the new software to accomplish this.
So once we have the maps determined in Springfield, or the districts, we then do the work of determining essentially which voters fall into which district, so that we then have the ballot designs appropriate come the November election.
Correct. That's where the geocoding come in of the blocks and the houses. Yes.
And this may be also something for Mr. Lasker. Do we anticipate that, once the legislature gives those districts, that there might be litigation with regards to the districts?
Well, there could be. It wouldn't be litigation against us. It would be litigation against the drafters of the districts. But they've already done 3 different drafts that they've proposed publicly, and there's been, some disagreement from all three of the drafts, which is why they're not done yet.
All right.
So hopefully they'll reach an agreement that's suitable to everybody.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at is the idea that, once it's all figured out, that's not the end of it. Then we have to scramble, do the mapping, determine which voters are in which district, figure out how this affects our ballot forms. So there's a lot of work to be done, as soon as we can get that information.
Well, that's correct, and because the legislature has repeatedly delayed itself on providing these, we are just going to have to get started. If litigation starts, we can't wait to see the outcome. We're just going to have to get started, and if the litigation ends up changing things, then we will have to make those
And
changes.
we can tweak it a little bit, but we
Yeah.
have to hit the
Yeah.
ground, as soon as we can.
And
Okay.
I did also want to point out that one of the big projects Mr. Hanson is also working on is that our whole entire voter registration database is being upgraded with the GIS information. So, there's sort of the ballot production and the districts side of the computer world here, but they're integrating it so that it's corresponds with the registration database as well. So, so that, for example, if someone submits a voter registration at an address that's not a residential address, the system will know that ahead of time. So that's another sort of part of the ongoing
Excellent.
process is to,
And
what,
and then eventually, all those maps will be placed on our new website, so the
Yes.
voters can also
exactly,
look at it.
Exactly.
And then the voters also will receive a new card with that district on it. So,
Gotcha.
what role does he play in the primary election?
In the primary election, he's working with the districts and boundaries to make sure basically that we have so many different ballot styles and so many different split precincts, that my understanding is that he works with a coordinated effort to, the board didn't used to use this GIS information, and so we're kind of still going through a long transition into the more modern GIS as compared to what used to be meets and bounds. And so it's a lot of double checking and triple checking that voters are in the proper place, provided the proper ballot.
And he's been, we've contracted with him since when?
It was, I believe, 2020 when it started, because the redistricting, started after the
Right.
2020 census. So I don't think it was earlier in the year, but later in the year when they got started with, the General Assembly did relatively quickly get done the congressional districts and the State House and State Senate. So that was the first stuff that he started working on. You might remember that the judicial subcircuits were delayed, and so when we thought he would be done, he wasn't done because the legislature hadn't done the judicial districts yet. And it's funny, in looking at the extension documents from last year when I was preparing them for you, we were talking about school board districts back then, right? So
Yeah.
we thought he'd be done with that by now.
All right,
Yeah.
okay.
Keep our fingers crossed.
Any other questions? If not, is there a motion to authorize the executive director to execute a one-year contract extension with Larry Hanson LLC for redistricting services with an extended term that shall begin on January 1st, 2024 and continue through December 31st, 2024, for the amount of $25,000 per month, not to exceed $300,000 in the 12-month period.
So moved by Commissioner Cressy.
Seconded by Commissioner Brown.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please state aye.
Commissioner Cressy votes aye.
Commissioner Brown votes aye.
Motion passes. Next is the ratification of a correction to the durational term in the board's contract with SKU Corporation for new developments. Mr. Lasker?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize for this, but in the last board meeting, the board did approve a new developments contract with SKU Corporation. We all discussed that it was supposed to be a 2-year term. The contract itself was written with the correct 2-year term, the end date of October 31st. However, my memo to you and the motion that was made was to end the contract at September 31st. So we would like you now to just ratify that the full 2-year term would end on October 31st.
It said September 31st?
September 30th.
Oh,
sorry.
okay. That's-
Sorry.
That was really a no date.
Yeah.
So the correct durational term should be through November 14, 2023?
It's October,
I mean,
October 30th.
2023 through October 31st, 2025. Is that
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Okay. So is there a motion to ratify and approve the durational term of November 14, 2023 through October 31st, 2025 for the board's current new developments contract with SKU Corporation?
So moved by Commissioner Brown.
Seconded by Commissioner Cressy.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please state aye.
Commissioner Brown votes aye.
Commissioner Cressy votes aye.
Motion passes. Next item is approval of a bid award and contract with No Inc. LLC as a result of the RFP for vote by mail ballot fulfillment for the 2024 elections. And speaking on this is Mr. Lasker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you're well aware, we issued an RFP for vote-by-mail ballots. We had 3 printing companies that submitted bids. One is the vendor we've been using for a few years. That vendor came in the top of the scoring. The second, however, that vendor's not capable of producing a 22-inch ballot. For a presidential primary election, it's quite important to have the longest possible ballot. The reason is primarily because the presidential delegates and alternate delegates are on that ballot in each congressional district. There have historically been very long lists of candidates because there are multiple positions filled in each of those races, and there are many people who submit their papers to be on the ballot for those positions. So having made the decision that we really need to move forward with a 22-inch ballot for the primary at least, that disqualified the top vendor. So we are today asking for consideration of a bid award and contract with the middle vendor, the second place scoring vendor, which is the top scoring for a 22-inch ballot. We see a third vendor that did submit a bid, a printing company that's new to the board, to my knowledge has not done any work with the board, but they are local and minority owned, and we do look forward to working with them on future printing jobs and even some guidance as to how they can get some experience in smaller election jurisdictions. Their bid proposal shows they'd never never produced any ballots or done any vote-by-mail services before. The company that we're asking for the contract with has done many election cycles with medium-large size jurisdictions, including they've done St. Louis County with with over 900,000 registered voters. They have 5 modern printing facilities, 5 different printing facilities, each of which can handle up to 85,000 ballots a day. They have their own proprietary ballot tracking system. Third place vendor didn't bid any sort of ballot tracking system. So I think we're going to see major enhancements in the voters' ability to track the status of their ballots at every step of the way. An interesting system too is that they have a perforated stub. If it ends up being the 22-inch single card ballot, there will be a perforated stub at the end that has a QR code that the voter uses to scan with their phone to track their ballot. They remove that stub and they keep that stub, and that's got all the information they need for how to track their ballot. This is an entity that has a lot of experience with vote by mail. We're confident that although they're a new vendor to us, they can get the job done and do it well. And so that's why we're moving forward with that recommendation of a bid award and contract.
Mr. Lasker, I'm curious, and also to put in the record, I already know a lot of this, but about the process that we follow in one of these bid awards. Now, you mentioned we have a scoring process, okay? About how many people are involved in the evaluation of these bids for the scores?
So the procurement office will impanel an evaluation committee based on what the bid is and which different departments and divisions have what we call sort of subject matter experts. So this was a pretty broad evaluation committee. I don't remember the exact number, but I'm thinking it was about 8 to 10 people.
So we have about 8 or 10 people each independently scoring each bid.
And the RFP document that's published and solicits the bids specifically sets forth the different categories of scoring categories. So
About how many criteria do we use?
a dozen to
I believe our Assistant Executive Director has one of the score sheets there, which, by the way, you did share with the
Yeah,
commissioners.
this has the 13 different numbers.
13 different, and these are objective criteria, such as you say, experience in this particular, printing, ability to meet the specifications in the RFP, years of experience in this work, things like that. These are objective, nothing subjective here.
That's correct. And in addition to that, every procurement we do, in the spirit of the city of Chicago's minority-owned and women-owned business enterprise, you get bonus points.
Well,
to use that term
that's
for that.
taken into consideration.
That's, yes, taken into consideration. And for this particular bid also, we did have part of complying with one of the terms set forth in the RFP, and therefore you get scoring for your compliance with it, is to be located close to Chicago. So,
Right.
for example, the vendor that scored third is a minority-owned vendor and is in suburban Cook County, so they got more points in those categories as compared to the vendor we're requesting, which is not minority-owned, unfortunately, and is far away in St. Louis. But with these procurement processes, we are limited to those who bid.
Well, unfortunately, St. Louis isn't that far away. It's not like it's in, California or
That's
something
correct.
like that. And so we do, again, each person independently scores it, and then we accumulate those scores and make the final determination of what the total score is based on these objective criteria.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lasker.
Well, I'm not the expert here on, reviewing RFPs, and that's why we rely on the expert knowledge of our staff to objectively review these bids and, tell us why they believe that a certain firm should receive the award. But I just want to, because I am also always very concerned about minority participation by vendors in all aspects, and but I do also realize that, as you said, the minority vendor has never done any mail ballots before. Is that right?
That's correct according to their proposal. There was
Because I assume we asked them if they had performed.
and we asked for business references, and so they didn't provide any election authorities as business references. There's no indication in their proposal whatsoever that they've done a vote by mail fulfillment.
Or that they have done any work for any other election authorities throughout?
Not to our knowledge, not based on the references, the professional references that they supplied.
And did we ask specifically for references from other election authorities, or?
I'd have to double check the language of the RFP to see if it specifically requests that. But I would say, though, that if you're submitting a bid to an election authority and you have those kinds of professional references, that would pretty clearly be a good one to provide.
Okay. And just, is it okay to share the points that each?
Yeah, that would be fine. So the top scoring entity was the Hensley Company. That's a woman-owned entity, 230 points. And they got quite a high score because that's the one of the three vendors, that's the one that we actually have prior experience. We know that it works with them. They've done our vote by mail for the past few election cycles. They first got started as a subcontractor in the vote by mail business. Then they became a prime contractor with us for a few election cycles. So the confidence level is high with the prior experience. They've proven directly with us that they can get the job done. The second place finisher was the No Ink LLC with 182 points. And again, although they're not minority-owned and although they're far away, they have done work with large election jurisdictions. They have the professional reputation. Their references were checked. And with 5 different printing facilities, there's no question they can handle. They also handle our workload. They have innovative and proprietary systems for mail merging, mail tracking, and so forth. And then the third place, the Aztec Printing Group, 131 points.
Okay.
And the highest score, though, could not provide us with the ballots that we require.
That's what they're, right, the RFP expressly said, we need you to bid for 17-inch and 22-inch ballots, and their bid did not include 22-inch.
And it's looking pretty clear, 22 is what we're going to require.
For
we're
a
gonna
presidential
need, yeah.
primary,
Yeah.
yeah.
Additionally, I forgot what my question is, but I just want to say, I may not be an expert at it, but I am a business professor. And this is a very thorough process that this board goes through with regards to bidding. And I only wish businesses out in the business community would go through a process as this, or I wouldn't have, well, if they did, I wouldn't have the case studies that I give my students on when it fails. So I want to thank you, Mr. Lasker, the executive director and the assistant executive director for, shepherding this process for all of our RFPs.
Well, and I'd like to thank Amanda Robledo, too, who's
of course, yes.
in our procurement office, because this was a very important bid. It's a bid that we have not had a lot of experience with, because for a while, there was only one certified vendor in the state. Then it became a bidding process where, for the past few years, we've had a contract.
Right.
So she's really stepped up, and I appreciate it.
And you mentioned in your comments, I remembered my question now. You mentioned that we need a provider who can print the quantity and the number of different versions of the ballots that is required by this jurisdiction. About how many different ballot forms, do they have to print?
There's about 4 or 5 things that get stuffed into the envelope that's mailed in what we call a ballot packet.
Right.
That may or may not include the sticker, the I voted sticker. But there's instructions in multiple languages. There's the ballot itself. There's the return envelope. So there are.
But the ballot itself has to be specific for that voter and where they live.
Absolutely.
And in the city of Chicago, we have like 400 different versions of ballots, or
At least 400 ballot styles per political party.
yeah.
It might be higher than that.
So
about right.
again, the proposal is to give it to a printing company that's got 5 different printing plants where they could respond to our needs.
Another thing to remember is that, so we've got approximately 130,000 people on the permanent roster.
Yeah.
Those ballots have to get out on day one.
Right.
And then we have a very high capacity, and there's a statutory obligation for us to get the ballots out, within, is it 24 or 48 hours after the application comes in. So
Yeah.
there's a mandatory, very fast turnaround, and there's just no room for error or for
And
failure.
approximately how many vote-by-mail ballots did we have in 2020?
Mr. Bever?
Was the highest. We had nearly 500,000 for November 2020. That number has stayed close to about 215,000 vote-by-mail ballots for the last 4 elections in a row.
Yeah,
So this is not a small job.
So we, as soon as we get a request for a vote-by-mail ballot, that ballot has to be out within 24 to 48 hours
Into the mail, yeah.
in the mail.
Yeah.
So we have to have a firm that has the capacity
Yeah.
to turn that around.
And, we'd love to, really, we got this bid from this new company, and minority-owned and more local. Like, we intend to follow up with them and any other printing companies. We've actually already spoken with some people about the possibility of having like a printer's symposium here, because we have a lot of different, as you know, we have a lot of different printing
Yeah.
needs. We have, next on the agenda, we've got 3 small little printing, bids. We do a lot of paper production here.
Elections require a lot of paper.
They do.
And we have to encourage any firms that are interested in doing our mail ballot and bidding for it to get that experience with smaller jurisdictions.
One thing that I heard, I would say unanimously from our evaluation committee members is we should just not be the first rodeo for a vote by mail vendor.
Right.
It's such a big part of the election process. It's such an important part of the process, and the time constraints are so strict that we really like to use a vendor that has some prior experience with it.
And goodness knows, there's a lot of jurisdictions just in this state, that can provide them with the experience. And there's a lot of, but we're sort of the big,
Kahuna.
the big kahuna on this
It's a big
one.
job.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
big job.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
In terms of compensation, Mr. Lasker, is that pretty much,
Madam Chair, the compensation is priced at a per ballot packet rate, so we don't put any real cap on it because
Right.
it depends. We don't know how many. We might get 200-something thousand like we did last
Right.
year, or we might get up to 500 because it's a presidential.
but we do,
Um,
but we do know the per ballot.
Yeah, so if up to 300,000 ballots, their price is $2.45 per packet. And then $2.40 if we exceed the 300,000. And that
Okay.
also includes their proprietary tracking system, which I think is going to be an improvement, and that's built into the cost. So
Okay.
that's the cost. It's as simple as that. Every packet we request, because a voter has requested it, that's the price for it.
So if I may, specifically on that point, to think that additional tracking, especially reaching voters' mailboxes, what has been a communications gap in the past with vote by mail, is extraordinarily worth that value, especially for voters' peace of mind as that ballot reaches their mailbox and then additionally tracked by the board and this vendor as it is mailed back to the board.
And are voters going to continue to get the text message or the email?
They will continue to get the emails, but they will now have an option to look at the mailing status of the ballot as it's reaching their mailbox as it's initially mailed by USPS.
So this isn't just the printing, this is also, as we would see in any of our Cyber Monday purchases, the handling charge as well.
The full fulfillment, from the time that we've got this voter who's applied for a ballot until they drop it into the mail system.
Beautiful.
They're also certified, I forget the term, but they're certified through the post office where they're pre-sorted, when they sort the mail at their facility and drop it off at the post office, they're certified where the post office doesn't even have to do that anymore.
Right.
So it's actually our vendor who gets that job done rather than the post office, and with all due respect to the post office, we like to be in charge of as much of it as possible.
Right.
Um,
And the post office gives them priority on mailing election.
Yes,
mail.
they have with their certification, there's a big green sticker they slap onto each package each package of packages
Right.
that gets delivered, and that gets put to the front of the line for mail.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. If there are no further questions, is there a motion to approve a bid award and contract with No Inc. LLC for vote by mail fulfillment services for the 2024 elections at a cost of $2.45 per ballot packet up to 300,000 ballots, or $2.40 per ballot packet if we exceed 300,000 ballots, and with a durational term beginning November 28th, 2023, and continuing through December 31st, 2024.
So moved by Commissioner Cressy.
Seconded by Commissioner Brown.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please state aye.
Commissioner Cressy votes aye.
Commissioner Brown votes aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Now we have a bid award for Cardinal Color Group for the production of ballot privacy sleeves. And who is Amanda?
Yes.
Hi.
Good morning, Chairwoman.
And by the way,
Commissioners.
I'm sorry I didn't mention you before, but thank you for your work as well.
Yeah, thank you.
The Procurement Office has reviewed and evaluated and recommends the award for the small bid ballot of privacy sleeves for the 2024 elections. The Procurement Office is recommending Cardinal Color Group. The small bid was competitively bid, and the award selection was based on comparative total cost, meeting the lowest bidder requirements. In response to this small bid, the board received a total of 6 responses from the following vendors: Cardinal Color Group, Lake County Press, the Sheely Group, the Envelope Connection, Grace Printing and Mailing, and Liberty Creative Solutions. Cardinal Color Group was the apparent lowest bidder, and the vendor has proven itself to be reliable and responsible with prior printing projects for the board. In early 2023, Cardinal Color Group performed the 2023 household mailer, and the board recently extended Cardinal Color's existing printing contracts for the 2024 elections. And the board has been very satisfied with their products and services. I've attached the bid tabulation documentation supporting the recommendation to award the contract to Cardinal Color Group, which appears to meet all the requirements for the small bid of privacy sleeves. Please consider granting the small bid ballot privacy sleeves for the 2024 elections to Cardinal Color Group in the amount not to exceed $21,890.
Any questions? If not, is there a motion to authorize the executive director to execute a contract with Cardinal Color Group for the printing of ballot privacy sleeves for the 2024 elections at a cost not to exceed $21,890?
So moved by Commissioner Ford.
And seconded by Commissioner Cressy.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please state aye.
Commissioner Brown votes aye.
Commissioner Cressy votes aye.
Motion passes. The next item is the J.J. Collins and Sons bid award for the printing of registration form 276. Amanda?
Yes. The Procurement Office has reviewed and evaluated and is recommending award for the small bid printing of voter registration forms 276 and 276A. The Procurement Office is recommending the award to 2 vendors, J.J. Collins for the printing of 276 and Cardinal Color Group for the printing of 276A. The small bid was competitively bid, and the award selection was based on the comparative total cost, meeting the lowest bidder's requirements. In response to the small bid, the board received a total of 2 responses, one from J.J. Collins and the other from Cardinal Color Group. J.J. Collins is the apparent lowest bidder for the Form 276. J.J. Collins has recently performed the voter canvas mailing and second notice, and the board recently extended J.J. Collins' existing printing contracts for the 2024 elections. Cardinal Color Group is the apparent lowest bidder for Form 276A. In early 2023, Cardinal Color Group performed the 2023 household mailer, and the board recently extended the Cardinal Color Group's existing printing contracts for the 2024 election. Both vendors have proven to be reliable and responsible with prior printing projects for the board, and the board has been very satisfied with their service and products. I've attached a bid tabulation documentation supporting the recommendation of award to contracts to J.J. Collins and Cardinal Color Group, which appears to meet all the requirements for the small bid. Please consider granting the award for the small bid printing of voter registration forms 276 and 276A to J.J. Collins in the amount not to exceed $15,600 and Cardinal Color Group in the amount not to exceed $1,995.
Okay. Go ahead. Oh. Sorry. Thank you. Any questions?
Nope.
Okay, if there are no questions, thank you, Amanda.
Well, not so much a question, but just, again, thank you for the very thorough manner in which you and the others handle the various contracts that come before us.
Oh, yes, I couldn't do it without the group here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to authorize the executive director to execute a contract with J.J. Collins and Sons for the printing of registration form 276 for the 2024 elections at a cost not to exceed $15,600, and to execute a contract with Cardinal Color Group for the printing of registration form 276A for the 2024 elections at a cost not to exceed $1,995.
So moved by Commissioner Brown.
Seconded by Commissioner Cressy.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please state aye.
Commissioner Brown votes aye.
Commissioner Cressy votes aye.
Motion passes. Next is the approval of a professional services agreement with Susan Casey for e-poll book implementation and training services. And who will present?
Okay, Madam Chair, Sue Casey works along with our staff at the warehouse and our IT department and community service with the poll book. Although we have a new poll book vendor, there are some items that we feel that are add-ons, and those charges are pretty high for the new vendor. For instance, additional add-on expense, the on-site support per person per day, they are looking to charge $3,000 a day for that charge. There is some on-site training. There's a quantity of 5 already paid for, and these are sessions with training the election judges, trainers. The implementation of on-time charges, there's a one-time $25,000 charge, but working and with the staff, we feel that to get us through the March election, we would like to have this contract with Ms. Casey. There are some items that 10X, as far as our election day support, that they're not familiar with, and she will be working along to help familiarize them with that process. And the departments that she works with, they feel that this will be a big help to them, and more so the warehouse, that she can get us through March, and then we should be able to go on from there.
Yeah, so we have a brand-new poll book coming in, and of course, there's that steep learning curve there. So we've got to get through it for this next election. And
Yes.
do it, and hopefully won't have to do this again
No.
for future election. Okay.
If I may just add too, that even with the old poll book vendor that we used for several years, Ms. Casey was still contracted on to bring in sort of coordination services that are not needed year-round.
Right.
And as a poll book specialist, she has been brought in to help facilitate between we've got several departments downtown, plus the warehouse, plus the vendor. So historically, that's been the case, but it does sound like the plan now is that a part of her contract now is to continue training the staff so that we don't need that in the future.
Exactly.
Okay.
Very good.
So you're saying that going forward, it's to integrate the process so that we pay one vendor for the entire service?
Or to have it so that we can work it out with our staffing to get accomplished these additional chores that are not needed year-round. Like, we don't have we couldn't quite justify a full-time position for this, but you have to have someone come in with experience. It's not like any temp employee can just come in and do this kind of work.
But our staff
So,
could be trained to trainer.
that's-
complete.
That's the idea from what I've been hearing from the staff, is that we're going to, with the new system, start. Because remember, also with the old system, when we started with the old e-poll book system, that was this board transitioning from paper poll books to electronic poll books. So that was a major transition. And now we're sort of used to the idea of e-poll books, but now we've got a new vendor. So let's make this smaller transition now. And again, these aren't legal issues, but this is what I'm hearing from the staff, is what the plan is. We'll get through this new, transition here through the primary, and theoretically, staff will be able to handle it from here on out, internally. And of course, still working with the actual poll book vendor.
Yep. hopefully most of this can be done in-house in the future.
That's what I'm hearing is the plan, yeah.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you. If there are no further questions, is there a motion to approve a professional services agreement with Susan Casey for electronic poll book implementation and training services at the rate of $100 per hour, not to exceed $100,000 over the term of this agreement, which shall begin on November 28th, 2023, and continue through November 27th, 2024?
So moved by Commissioner Cressy.
Seconded by Commissioner
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please state aye.
Commissioner Cressy votes aye.
Commissioner Brown votes aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Now we'll proceed with legal report. Mr. Lasker?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to point out that since our last meeting, we were provided by the city with official transmission of the certification of the citywide binding referendum to us. So that is official now. It will be on our ballots, every ballot in the city for the primary in March. It is relatively long. If you can see it, it starts here and has those 3 paragraphs and continues on with a 4th paragraph on the next page. So I mentioned earlier that the delegates and alternate delegates make our primary ballot long. This is adding to that, those constraints. He's not in the room, but I tip my hat to Powell on our staff, who's really stepped up as quite the good ballot designer, so I'm sure he'll get it done. In addition to that, we have 23 electoral board hearing officers who have responded as being available for this upcoming cycle, so I think we're in good shape there. We'll be renewing those contracts with you at the next board meeting, and we have our training set for this week, Thursday,
Okay.
to get ready for those December 18th hearings.
Thank you.
Oh, one last thing I would say is I was informed by legal counsel for the county clerk's office. I think he said it was 54 nomination petitions filed yesterday for the first day of filing, which is a relatively low number for a presidential cycle. That could mean that there are more candidates waiting until the end of the cycle, or it could just mean that we're going to have a lighter load of candidates. We'll see.
Okay.
And the deadline for filing is next Monday.
That's correct.
Thank you.
And yes, Madam Chair, back in 2020, this particular election cycle, there was only like 46 cases that we had to hear for record examinations.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
thank you. Now we will proceed with the financial report. We have a balance sheet and voucher listing for the City of Chicago, a 2023 appropriation number 23-07 dated November 28th, 2023, in the amount of $3,068,377.45. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved by Commissioner Brown.
Seconded by Commissioner Cressy.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please state aye.
Commissioner Brown votes aye.
Commissioner Cressy votes aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next, we have a balance sheet and voucher listing for the County of Cook, 2023 appropriation number 23-03, dated November 28, 2023, in the amount of $1,246,476.53. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved by Commissioner Cressy.
Seconded by Commissioner Brown.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please state aye.
Commissioner Cressy votes aye.
Commissioner Brown votes aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Now we have public comment, and we have Don Olson. Good morning, Don.
Good morning.
And everyone else. Olson, and I'm here today to say a few words about my friend and colleague, Claire, who I think you probably all know at this point that Claire died on November 17th. It was a short illness, so that was a good thing. Claire was 79 years old, and she died of cancer, and it was pretty far advanced by the time it was diagnosed. So things moved very quickly. Claire was born in Ireland, and I think some of you have mentioned that you noticed that. And came to this country with her husband when she was 26 years old. And their original intention was just to come for a few years. And Claire ended up spending the rest of her life here. And I would say that she became a very good citizen. Claire is, in my mind, the ideal citizen, was very involved in all sorts of civic and political activities on every level of government. She went to Democratic conventions, she protested in Washington, D.C., she lobbied in Springfield, and of course in Chicago, and even down to her little neighborhood of Edgewater. She was very active in Edgewater. So there are all sorts of people that she's worked with over the years in all these activities. But probably her main field of endeavor, perhaps, or at least one of the main fields, was election integrity. And Claire started coming down to the board in 2004, as she told us when she was here in September. And pretty consistently was coming down for years and years, especially with representing Illinois Ballot Integrity Project, but also Clean Count Cook County. And the focus of Claire's concerns, as far as elections go, was transparency. And what transparency means for elections is observability. And of course that means poll watchers. And Claire was really the poll watcher supreme and trained many people in how to be a poll watcher. For many years got credentials for poll watchers and organized poll watchers. She got credentials in the name of Illinois Ballot Integrity Project. And she credentialed many, many, many poll watchers through the years. So the concern of transparency has to do with a lot of changes and innovations that have been made in elections in the past 20 years, especially with machine counts and with the way we vote changing so much. You know, it used to be voting on election day and absentee ballots, and that was it. And now we have early voting, and the whole process has expanded so much that her concern, as well as mine, is that the role of, we've kind of forgotten the importance of the role of poll watcher, and that it's poll watchers who determine whether an election is valid or not. When we go to foreign countries to look at elections, we poll watch to determine whether the elections are valid. So this is part of our belief that elections are a community endeavor, not a bureaucratic endeavor, and that it takes all the members of the community coming together, a board of elections, but then all of those election judges, Democratic and Republican, that come together, and the poll watchers who are watching everybody to make sure that everyone is doing what they're supposed to do. So when I thought about what I should say today, I knew that Claire would say, don't talk about me, talk about the issues. So I'm going to just highlight and mention 3 issues that Claire was particularly concerned about right now. And this is what she would want me to do. So the first issue is the 5% audit. She really believed that we need to write a new 5% audit law. One of her main concerns is that mail-in ballots, which are an ever-increasing percentage of the vote, aren't included in the 5% audit. And that's increasingly troublesome. And that's something that should be changed. Also, because of the way machines have developed, the lack of hand counting, because there used to be a lot of hand counting, and hand counting is very labor intensive, as we know. But the best audit, of course, of a machine count is a hand count, and the ultimate audit is a hand count. So she was concerned about the diminishing role of hand counting in the audits, and then also that in the state of Illinois, our 5% audit doesn't have any consequences written into the audit law. You know, if they do the 5% count and there are gross irregularities, there's nothing in the law that says, what do you do next? So audit laws should be written, as I'm sure Commissioner Cressy would appreciate with his background. There should be, you should have to have a certain accuracy at the 5% level. If you don't achieve that, then you go on to the 10% level, et cetera. There should be more of a process in how an audit really should work. Secondly, Claire was very concerned. She was delighted, I should say, when during the pandemic, new laws were written in the state of Illinois. And one of the things that troubled us for years was the identification of voters' signatures on vote-by-mail ballots, on the envelopes. That process never really worked very well, and I kicked up a lot of stink myself about it here for quite a while. But in the pandemic, the law was changed so that there was a panel of 3 judges, 2 of one party and 1 of the other, that reviewed all of those signatures on those mail-in ballot envelopes. And poll watchers were allowed to be there, hear the deliberations between the judges, and then on a screen, the signatures were shown so that even the poll watchers could compare the signatures to the signatures that were on file with the Board of Elections. That was a great system. And Claire wished, what happened was, of course, when the pandemic
Abated.
ended and the emergency became officially ended, that law sunsetted. I do know that in at least some places in Illinois, they've continued to do that process, and that's what Claire would wish. When that process was in force, Claire and Laura Chamberlain came down, and they went to the Chicago version of that process, and they thought it was fantastic. And they also went to the Cook County version of that process, and they thought it was horrible. So at that time, I think we told Adam Lasker that information and wanted Chicago to share with Cook County the way you were doing it, because it was a really the most transparency we've ever seen for mail-in ballots. Those signatures are so important with mail-in ballots because it's really the only thing that validates the ballot, other than getting here on time. So we'd like to see that reinstated. I think that's something that you could do without the law being changed. So we'd like you to consider that. Claire would like you to consider that. And then finally, Claire was very involved in gathering lots of information. She really gathered a lot of information. She was the Freedom of Information Act queen. She FOIA'd all sorts of things from the Board of Elections. And in 2020, one of our concerns was, once upon a time, in the olden days, poll watchers would gather numbers in the polls on Election Day. Absentee ballots would be brought to the precincts where they were from, and all the votes from that precinct would be counted in front of the poll watchers on Election Day, so that the numbers that poll watchers got at that time, they could then compare to the numbers published by the Board of Elections. And the numbers were either the same or not. But that was an important check on the system, an important check on a Board of Elections that proves the validity of an election. But now, those numbers, the numbers that we get on tapes in the polling places never actually are published unless you FOIA, as Claire did in 2020, the total breakdown of the votes. What was Election Day, what was early voting, et cetera, et cetera. So more transparency with those numbers is something that was very important to Claire. So the last time that Claire was here, I was here with her. That was on September 12th, and that happened to be the day that you honored Judge Delort, and both of us were shocked when we walked in the room, and there were all these election lawyers there, many of whom we knew through the years and had all sorts of experiences with. When Claire and I went out to lunch afterwards that day, and we just talked about all that election legal knowledge that was in the room that day. It was pretty amazing. And we thought, you know, if we could pick the brains of all those people that were in the room that day, we'd come up with a lot of interesting comments about how Illinois election law should be reformed. And I know just from some of the people in the room here, you know, I've heard ideas about how the problems with the election law. And we thought now with some changes of leadership in Springfield, it might be a really opportune time to make some serious changes. And I'm sure I know I have a list of things that I've encountered in the election code that I think should be changed or eliminated or whatever, or added. And I'm sure you all have your own lists as well. So moving on to the future, I'm realizing how important it is that people who really understand the nuts and bolts of elections, and it's kind of a limited group. You know, I've noticed when I've been talking about some election issues recently, especially ranked choice voting, that when I'm trying to explain it to people and what the issues, pro and con, are with it, it doesn't take long for people's eyes to glass over. And what is terribly interesting to me isn't necessarily interesting to them. So we realize the importance of you people, you know, the election lawyers or the people at the Board of Elections here who really understand how elections work, how important you are and we are, the election integrity activists, to forming a better election code. And so that's what we talked about at lunch after we left on that day. So I'd like to close with just letting you know that the last real conversation I had with Claire was about a week before she passed away, when she was still able to talk and have a conversation. And we had a private little conversation. Her daughter-in-law closed the door, and it was just me and Claire, and we shared memories and laughed a little. But then at a certain point in our conversation, Claire looked at me very seriously. And she wanted to talk about her unfinished election integrity agenda. And she had some general and very specific instructions for me as well. And, you know, I almost started laughing when she did it because it was just so like Claire. I mean, here, right up to the very end, you know, how many of us a week before we go will be talking about our election integrity agenda so fervently and so passionately? So that was Claire, and my friend, my colleague, and in my opinion, a really good citizen. Thank you.
Thank you, that was beautiful.
Don. Very,
Thank you, Don.
I really appreciate that. And I just want to say that I've known Claire here for a long time. You know, she was here regularly on, you know, for many years, and she was dogged, and she was, you know, consistent in her approach, always emphasizing election transparency, as you say, in various ways, but during all those times that she came up here and spoke, and she came to me personally, I must say that she always, what I appreciated was she did so respectfully, and, you know, and she did it in a way that you knew that she was listening to what you had to say, and it was vice versa. We listened to what she had to say And for that, I will always appreciate, her and, her objectives and her approach. I, on behalf of the board, send out my deep condolences to her family and friends, to you, Don, all those she regularly dealt with. I know she's at peace now. So, thank you.
Madam Chair, may I add a few words?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. She was so polite that I never would have asked her age. So for you to tell us that she was 79 kind of blows my mind, because she
Really?
did not look or act that up until last September, this September when we saw her.
Wow.
I have known her. I echo the sentiments about her respectfulness. She always kept us pointed in the right direction. She brought things to our attention that needed to be brought to our attention, but she did it respectfully. I want you to know that I shared this news with my predecessor, the former General Counsel, Jim Scanlon, and I can't say anything better than he can, so I'm just going to use his words to close out. He says, "Claire was always dedicated to the goal of clean, honest, and accurate elections. She was knowledgeable, articulate, and respectful. Her passing is a big loss for the election community." Sorry, Don.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Now I don't believe we have any further requests for public comment. And so at this time, we're going into executive session, and we will not be voting on any matters within executive session or thereafter. I think what we're going to do is just simply adjourn the meeting once we get out of executive session. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to enter into executive session for the purpose of discussing the performance of specific employees as authorized by Section 2C1 of the Open Meetings Act.
Seconded by Commissioner Cressy.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please state aye.
And Commissioner Cressy votes aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
We are now back from executive session. No official action was taken in executive session. And at this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved by Commissioner Cressy.
Seconded by Commissioner Brown.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please state aye.
Commissioner Cressy votes aye.
Commissioner Brown votes aye.
Motion passes, and we're adjourned. Thank you.